I'm Heather Vale.
And I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones.
And we're speaking with Bob Doyle, who was an expert in The Secret, also the creator of Boundless Living and Wealth Beyond Reason. Thank you so much for being here, Bob.
My pleasure, Heather.
So we're going to talk today about the power of energy and emotions.
Okay.
This kind of ties in with the law of attraction, but it's such a big topic to talk about. First, though, before we lead into that, I want to address, a lot of people think that the law of attraction is about positive thinking.
Yeah.
And the media put that out there.
Yeah.
Positive thinking, positive thinking. What's the truth?
Well, the law of attraction is more of a scientific, exploration into how the universe works. Positive thinking is thinking positively. Now, the reason people say that is because if you think positively, then your energy changes and you can attract things. So they've bridged it, but it's not the same thing. The law of attraction works how it works, regardless of whether you're thinking positively or negatively or whatever.
Right.
Obviously, though, it's more fun and better to think positively, but it's not about never thinking negatively. That we're not robots, right?
Right. And a lot of people ask that, like, how do I think positive all the time? No, you're not supposed to. You will explode if you try to think positive.
We have a whole wide range of emotions for a very good reason, right? If we weren't meant to feel bad sometimes, we wouldn't have been built that way, right? But what happens is that, if we have a negative emotion, it's really a signal that, hey, we're a little off course, it's time to adjust, You're not supposed to stick there. But a lot of people, that's what they do. They just get stuck in their negative emotion to the extent that that's how they identify themselves. Oh, I'm just a depressed person, or I'm just angry, or whatever. They've created an identity around their negative emotion, whether it got them attention, or they learned it on TV, or however they learned that way of thinking, or maybe they actually have a chemical condition. But the point is that they get stuck there in that negative emotion, and it becomes more comfortable for them than even positive emotion. So that's not right. We don't want that.
Right.
But it's not about never feeling negative emotion. You will, and it's normal, and it's actually good, to an extent, to have that experience, process energy, all of that, feel grief at appropriate times, all of those things. So, but yeah, it's not totally okay to have negative emotions, but you do not want to wallow in them.
Right.
I think some people get almost neurotic about it. They think, well, if I think anything negative, something negative is going to happen, so I can never think anything negative.
Yeah.
So, but that's a negative thought in itself.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then they have difficulty getting out of that loop, that stressing loop.
And
they end up in denial. And it's that classic joke about, the positive person who, everything's just wonderful and good. And then
Heather
they end up
dislikes
like,
that.
Oh, yeah.
and then they end up cracking and going crazy and going like postal on everything because they clamped down those negative emotions for so long and denied them.
And even if it's not going postal, there is going to be a balance. If you are denying true valid emotions that are going on in you, negative or otherwise, it's gonna catch up to you.
Right.
Yeah, and there will be some sort of a venting, an explosion, inappropriate blast of the balance.
Right.
So,
How would you say, what would be a practical tip for dealing with that, for preventing that?
well, I think education, first of all, letting people know that, number one, it's okay to feel that, and that there are ways that if you feel like you're getting stuck, there are ways to deal with that. Like you are not a prisoner to your negative emotions. There are ways, without drugs and things like that, to actually, process those emotions appropriately. A lot of times it's as simple as go ahead and feel it. If you're sad, have it. It's okay. Get it and then move through it, because the more you hold it in, it's just that's how you get sick. It's just
So
not right.
release it, let it go.
Release
Move
it,
on.
let it, feel it, embrace it, be grateful, whatever. But don't push it away thinking, oh my God, if I do this, it's going to be bad. Because, like you said, it becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even if you expect things negative to happen, it's not even that's going to cause them to happen. You'll just see them. You'll just see circumstances that are negative. Because that's your reticular activating system is looking
Right.
for negativity. And so you'll see it all over the place, even though someone standing right beside you won't see it the same way you do. So it's not that you are attracting negative situations as much as you're just attracting a negative experience of a situation. You're allowing your brain to go there because
Right.
you're looking for it.
I actually had this conversation the other day with a really good friend who was saying, you're always arguing with me, you're always challenging me. And I'm like, okay, I compliment you every day. I'm like, what are you not seeing? And he's like, oh, I guess I'm just a negative person. He was seeing only the negative side of the coin. It's like,
yeah, and the thing is that is a trait that starts somewhere early in life for some reason, and it becomes that pattern and habitual, and they don't even know they're doing it. And that's a great example. If you're always doing this, well, no, I'm not, but you notice every time I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looking for the dark side, the negativity,
Yeah.
and seeing
Yeah.
it.
And finding it, right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then that validates it, and then they say, well, see, it's a negative world, and I'm a negative guy, and this is just what's going to happen to me. And it really takes a big sort of energetic shakeup to change that.
Yeah. So when we talk about positive thinking and negative thinking, to me that's kind of surface level. That's like the beginning of the equation. What you're talking about a lot, you're talking about emotions, you're talking about feelings, you're talking about resonance and vibration. So is the process that it starts with a thought and then the feeling follows?
I think a lot of times it does. Like if I think of my kids, I have a happy, loving feeling or whatever. It's not like I'm maybe sometimes I'm feeling a loving feeling and it makes me think of my kids. I don't know that there's any one particular way, but definitely thoughts are the beginning. They're the impetus for some sort of a reaction in your brain. You have a thought and is this a good thought or a happy, or a bad thought or whatever, there's no absolute truth to it. It's just how you perceive it. So how am I going to take this thought and translate it into an emotion, which then changes your vibration, which changes the communication basically that you're having with the universe saying this is what is, and then that's how your actual experience gets changed or manipulated, I guess, if you will, energetically.
Okay.
I like it.
Because what happens a lot, like we get these catchphrases like thoughts become things. And I've heard comedians and I've heard critics of the law of attraction say things like, well, if I become what I think about most, which is one of the messages people got from The Secret, if I become what I think about most, I should be a porn star. Ha 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 ha.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what do you say to that?
That's kind of a complex thing. This may seem like a leap, but it reminds me of people who think they're like, if I have a fear of flying, it's going to make the plane crash, right? That's their what if I bring down the plane because I'm afraid of flying? Well, I think, and you probably know way more about this than I do in terms of fears, but I think that there's like a fear of flying. Like I think a lot of people have that sort of discomfort with flying. We were just talking about this.
Absolutely.
But they don't really believe the plane is going to crash, right? They just, I don't like flying, and they become that conversation as I have a fear of flying, but it's really a conversation that they're having.
If they really believed it, they wouldn't get on the plane at all.
Yeah, I mean, if they really thought the plane was going to go down, they wouldn't get on it. But it's just that whole, it almost becomes like, oh, that's my thing. I'm afraid of flying,
Right.
And they perpetuate that conversation.
I don't know if fears are even logical because I would say I'm afraid of heights. I can go up in some building, well, maybe not the Stratosphere because it's kind of short, but the CN Tower in Toronto where I grew up, which is like 10 to 20 times the height of the Stratosphere, and there's a glass floor.
Yeah.
And when you go to step on that glass floor, like it's just, I know logically it's not going to collapse.
Yeah.
I know it's perfectly safe, but that fear is still there.
I've been there. I kind of walked on and walked
Yes!
off.
Yeah,
Just in case.
I have also been there, and I had that same experience. But I think that's normal, and I get maybe some of that is learned too. We learn a fear of heights from TV or wherever, and we see the whole vertigo type of effect, and now we're looking at that thing and go, oh, this is like in that movie where da-da-da, and they fell a long distance. I mean, probably a lot of association, whereas like a little kid might just run right out there and go, wee, I'm up in the air, They don't have that yet. It hasn't been taught to them to be afraid. That's not my area, but I could hypothesize that some of those fears are just strictly learned and then embodied,
Okay.
So they become part of our emotional reaction to that.
Yeah,
And they create that energy for us.
that's right.
Which perpetuates it.
It perpetuates it. That's the thing. It's such a loop. We get in a cycle, and that's what we don't see, is that we're running these programs over and over and over. We don't recognize them as programs. We don't see the loop that we're in. And that's why it's very often helpful to get outside help, somebody else to reflect back and really show them the truth of what they're saying, or at least even if it's just different, to show that, this is another possible way of thinking about it. And then when they can see that and say, okay, well, there are options. I have a choice about how I feel about this or that thing. That's very freeing and empowering as well.
Yeah, okay. So speaking about beliefs and energy and emotions, society is really good at giving us images of certain things that make us feel certain things. Movies, for example, TV shows.
Yeah.
we could talk for days about how much subliminal programming is in it, and also about the intention of the filmmaker. It might not be that they are trying to program us to believe a certain thing, but they tell us stories that most people relate to. 99% of people in the world will relate to someone who is struggling in some way.
Yeah.
So we see these images, and we take in the stories and the musical score that's meant to make us feel these emotions.
Yeah.
How do you suggest dealing with that?
Again, it's about being mindful that is happening,
Okay.
because we don't. I mean, you turn on TV and you're hypnotized. You're in a trance, right? I mean, that just is automatic. It just you don't. It doesn't take any time at all, and you're just totally just taking it in, and you're not guarding. You just no filter. I mean, you may know that, okay, I don't like this type of film, and turn it off, or this is disturbing to me, and turn it off. But if, like I have memories in my brain of movies that I caught as a kid, just flipping the channels, that were so disturbing that, they stayed with me for the longest time. And what they did is, I call it this pool of possibility. It's just a little bit of, it would probably take a little bit longer to explain, but if you see an event on television or on the news or something that's negative that you've never seen before, it becomes a part of things that can happen, okay, in your brain. It's like, oh, that can happen? And now now that it becomes more likely that you'll either see it again or whatever. It's not that it's going to happen to you, but it does become a part of your energetic system. And so again, you can do things to take the trauma out of it, And it's funny because you could watch the same movie as an adult and go, "That's what did it." That you amp that thing up, because it is, again, our reactions to things is not just about what we're seeing, it's about all of our associations with anything about that. So that's our whole life experience. Anything that's happened to us or that we've heard about, it all just compounds. And then it becomes a part of our memory, and it does have emotion associated with it. So again, but we're just allowing it to happen. We're just completely running on autopilot, most of us.
Yeah.
99.9 whatever huge percent of what we're attracting is completely subconscious. I'm not thinking about attracting that lamp. It's not my vision board. It's not my vision board.
Nobody wants to attract that lamp.
Right. But there is an actual reason that it's there, that it's showing up in my space. But it's way more complicated than, I even care to figure out.
Right.
But the point is that so much of our experience is completely autopilot. The fun about learning this is that we do, with a little intention and some clearing of this, we actually have a lot more control over our experience of life than we've ever known, and that's what this work, quote unquote, is all about. It's like, wow, we've learned this. How can we play with it? But the problem is that the industry has just so oversimplified it and turned it into a marketing thing or a toy or a magic wand or whatever, and that gets people excited, obviously, but they're setting themselves up for tremendous disappointment.
Right.
And that's part of the new Bob Doyle. I mean, you realize that people need one-on-one coaching, so that's why you're getting down in the trenches again and working with people. Because
the material, that the education can be outstanding, but it's still that one person going through that.
Yeah.
And if they run up against any of their stuff and no one can reflect it back, hey, that's just the stuff. We can do that. We can work past this and get you to the next phase. Then they're going to get stopped, and they're going to go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and until they deal with whatever that stop is, they're going to get the same. They're always going to get that same result or lack thereof.
Okay, so let's take it off autopilot for people. Usually, with a problem, the first step is awareness, and you've mentioned several times about being aware what we're feeling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we go through the days, we experience all these different emotions, and most of the time we don't even think about it. We're out driving, we might know when we get angry that someone cut us off. Other than that, we're not really paying a lot of attention a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, how do we start becoming more aware of our emotions so we can choose, where to focus them?
Well, so I think instead of having to mind your emotions or thoughts all day, because that would be exhausting, but you do know when you feel bad. I mean, just noticing that. And then, a little inquiry, if it's appropriate to do it then or later, it's like, well, what is that about? Again, yes, it's that awareness. And a lot of times, if you can figure out where that came from, you don't always have to know the source, but if you recognize that feeling, that's when you would do something to deal with it, whether it's a hypnosis thing or meditation or, a release technique or whatever. Once I did EFT for a year or so, I learned what it felt like to release. And so it's way easier to spontaneously do it. but I'm like a lot of people, sometimes we just want to be in our crap, you know? It's like, I'm going to feel this. It's just a slippery slope,
Right.
you know? Go ahead, feel it, process, whatever, but don't become a victim of
Don't
it.
live
It's a very slippery slope because there's a certain chemical thing. I mean, some people just really get off on that negative emotion. They love the feeling of the anger or whatever. And it's like
It has adrenaline.
Yeah.
Just like riding a roller coaster or doing extreme sports.
Yeah. So that negative emotion, it's familiar. They feel justified. A lot of times negative thinkers do that because they can be right. It's a lot easier to prove something that's negative or so. Look at this thing that went wrong. See, I was right. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, this will never happen to me. And of course, they can do whatever, subconsciously or consciously, to make sure it doesn't happen. And then they justify that. And then they get to be right.
Yeah.
So do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Right.
And
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, one thing that I'm getting as you talk as an overall theme, and this new Bob Doyle thing that I'm hearing, is that you have a message that things aren't always cut and dry like people think they are.
Right.
We are complex organisms, and sometimes you really have to get in there to the nitty gritty and admit that you're human. You're not necessarily a computer.
Right.
And that's an awesome message.
yeah, this is so not about being perfect, whatever that means to you. And that is also very subjective.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have the opportunity to have an amazing experience of life with a wonderful range of emotions and abundance and love and all of those things. We have that. It's right here for us. But it's about making the choice that we don't even know that we have.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love about being in this work, which can be frustrating at sometimes when everybody's making it difficult. But is showing people that possibility, waking them up to that passion that they buried because of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you know that happens through coaching. I mean, that just is the way that it. I personally resisted coaching for a long time because I thought I know this stuff. It's one thing to know it,
Yeah.
but to be guided through where you're stopped and have something else reflected back to you that you can't possibly see. That's where really, at least rapid transformation comes in. It can take you years on your own where it could, seriously, one conversation where somebody sees something key in you can make all the difference. My favorite thing is when they say, I never would have thought of that.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and that makes that whole 45 minutes or hour totally worth it because now they've got something brand new that they can work with that they never had before. And they never would have gotten without somebody reflecting it back with a little experience with people and, you know, knowing how to coach, basically.
Yeah. So if someone watching wants to be coached by you, how do they do that?
Well, I didn't know you would ask such a thing. BoundlessLivingCoaching.com is my, you know, sort of coaching portal. Mm-hmm. And so if they're really interested, I mean, not like sort of curious, but if they're really ready for that, then they can fill out a little application. We can have a conversation and decide whether they're ready or not. I mean, you don't take everybody. Mm-hmm. You take the people who are really, really ready and committed and not going in cross-armed and like you can feel them. Mm-hmm. You know, you can feel it, what they say, you can hear their passion, and then it's just helping them make that decision to really claim their life. I mean, that's what this is about. A good coach is giving a person an opportunity to really live the life that they were here to live, that they've gotten disconnected from for whatever reason. So finding out what those reasons are, creating that new vision, and moving them through it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for being here and sharing with us your knowledge.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Bob.
Sure.
I'm Heather Vale,
And I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones.
helping you heat up your success at hotsuccesssecrets.com.